Hello again, folks. I'm back this time because we were having a discussion on model rail radio, and if you don't listen to it, you should, about current day modelers not having the confidence to tear into a locomotive that they maybe spent a couple $100s on. Well, you don't actually start out that way, and I'm going to show you how I kind of go about it, and you can take some lessons or take some warnings, however you want to look at it. Let me put some air on in here and I'll be right back. So I suppose before we start all this, that the first thing we need to have is a workspace. And part of that workspace is plenty of light, especially for us that are older, shall we say. Now, I like these little mats, and this is a good place to start for a clean workspace. Plus I can pick it up after I'm done, sweep up, clean up, do whatever. But I also picked up a little tray. This was at Craft Warehouse. It's a little serving tray. They're supposed to toll paint them or whatever, but it gives you a nice spot to work on your model and hopefully keep from losing all the little parts. The other thing that I said that comes in handy, which I picked these up a while ago, you saw them in the last video, storage containers to put all the little pieces as you take them off the model so you don't lose them. You can write notes, keep a notepad and a paper handy, and keep everything organized so that you remember what you were doing when you come back to it. Don't start on your really favorite model unless it needs it, but I would work your skills up. Pick yourself up some, what do we want to call it, swap meet fodder. Now these are not necessarily swap meet fodder, but they were given to me by my brother-in-laws. They don't really have any special significance to me because they have not been updated, they've been mistreated, they had them as kids or young adults. Still have Rapido couplers on them, all sorts of stuff. This one's actually in pretty good condition, but it's DC. It needs to have a DCC decoder, it needs to have a coupler change, needs some TLC. I also have some really old Minitrix and Rivarossi. This is a Rivarossi steam engine. It's missing the wiring between the tender and the locomotive. Other than that, it's a good running locomotive. It's been converted over to Microtrains couplers, but I have to go inside to hook up the wires to get that back on the road, plus a DCC decoder. It's actually in fair condition, shell-wise. Probably survived pretty well because it didn't have a lot of details to break off. You know, there's not handrails, there's just the front and the rear, and it probably didn't get run into a bunch of stuff and handled a lot. It does have a couple of things that I don't care for, which is these nylon driver wheels. And I don't know that you can see this, but one, it got dropped at some point. If you look at this wheel right here, that, make sure you can see that, that wheel has a flat. The flange is actually bent, and I think I filed it off to make it so it would go through a switch, the frogs, and so it runs. It's just not in the best of shape, so probably needs to be cleaned and lubed and a bunch of other things, so we'll set that aside. But I would start with models of this caliber that have been abused, such as this poor guy. I did find a box that has the handrails in it, but you notice the paint's all torn up. It's pretty sad. Okay, next order of business. Once we've picked our unfortunate subject, if you can find manuals, search on the internet, Google the manufacturer's website, see if you can find a manual or at least an exploded diagram of how to take this locomotive apart, or what the pieces are and how they go together. Another thing that I would suggest, we're going to talk about tools a little bit here. For most of us, especially those of us working in N or Z, our eyesight's getting a little bad. A magnifier's a good idea. For most of this stuff, all you're going to need is a set of screwdrivers. I have a few sets of these little guys. These are Radio Shack Realistic. I worked at Radio Shack for a few years. I also have, and this might be a little overkill, but it's from my days when I used to go out on computer installs and stuff like that. A nice little kit. This is a Craftsman. Has square heads, flat blades, and Phillips. And that's probably what I'll be using today because they're a really nice set. Keep your stuff organized and get some good tools. Alright, so most of these, I've had this guy apart, but if you find your book, you know, I have an atlas here. An atlas is pretty good about, in the bottom of their packaging, there's a little diagram. It may not tell you how to get the thing apart, but it will tell you what all the parts are, and that's a good thing. So hang on to these guys when you find them. So I have a little exploded diagram. Doesn't really tell me the clips or the screws. Sometimes they will, sometimes they don't. That's a handy little reference. Now, if I remember correctly, this is a Minitrix U-boat. There's no screws. As you see, there's no pilots, or the couplers are truck mounted, so there's not a pilot in the way that you have to remove the coupler pocket or anything like that. The shell should just come off. The one thing about these Minitrix I do notice is you can see a hole right through here in the running board, and that's a little pin that holds the truck on. So while the shell's on, that's captured and can't get out. But you don't want to just tear into it and be haphazard. Be a little gentle, work at it. Fuel tank comes off. It's got a little tab on each side. And that comes off. If you have to, take a piece of chalk and mark which edge for the front of the locomotive. I'm just going to set that in the box here, facing away from me. And on these locomotives, this is your pickup area. So you want to be very, very careful not to bend these little bronze pickups or scratch these surfaces in here, because that's what conducts the electricity up to the motor. Brought out, these are helpful. Little round toothpicks. I got a box of flat ones too. But sometimes you need like 3 or 4 hands to get these things going. A couple toothpicks out. And when you pry the shell open with your little screwdriver, you may need to hold it open while you work at the other end to keep the tab from re-engaging. Okay, there is a little tab that I can see showing through the slot here, and I believe that's what I have to get opened up. Okay, and you can cut these, break them, whatever, to get the amount of spread that you need that'll stay in the shell. Okay, we'll turn them sideways. Pull my screwdriver out. Flip this over. Put that, okay. That pulls that off. There's your shell off. Now you've got the frame Remember these little pins that I told you about? Well, these just push out the side. You see, there's the little pin. Once you have that out, your truck falls away. Like I said it before, be careful with that little pickup right there. And as you can see, well, maybe you can't, but and you see this is pretty greasy, grimy, grungy there. So we would want to clean all that up, get rid of the little cat hairs and whiskers and whatever else we've got, and keep track of your trucks, which one's front, which one's rear. That one comes out of there. Okay. There's the other gear tower. Now you can hook the motor up, you can hook leads up to here with a little DC power pack or the infamous 9-volt battery and run this, put some cleaner in here to clean up the brushes and the commutator. There's a pickup here at the bottom of the motor and one pickup here that contacts the frame at the top. And that, so this PC board isolates everything for the motor half from the frame. So the frame is all one pole. It's not a split frame or anything. Now, as far as getting the motor out of here, there's a clip here. You can see it right along here, and a clip right here, which is right there. They come and wrap around that little bit, and so you spread those two, pop that out, and your motor will drop out. It'll come out with this coupling, or break apart at this coupling. So I would want to get the union there in that orientation so that that piece can just fall out. But I think right now this, you could clean this with, as it is, with some contact cleaner, soap and water, blow it air dry, and then put a little bit of contact cleaner in here, or you can get in and polish those with maybe a micro brush, and get all these gears and things cleaned up, and then re-lubricate them. There is another clip down here at this end, right here, and one right here, that are holding these little brass pieces that this drive shaft goes through for the front gear tower. But I think just generally cleaning it up. There's provisions here, right here, through this little channel for a light at the back of the locomotive, which they never put in, but you could easily, if you find room for a decoder in here, make this with the reversing light. Now, as far as room for a decoder, one of the old tips that I had, and from a long time ago, is you put a little modeling clay, like a little roll up, a little roll, maybe toothpick size, drop it into the shell, press it in place, with, make it stick. Put the shell back on, take it back off, and that will show you how much room you have. I can tell just from looking at this one that there's not much room in this for a decoder. It's pretty much solid. So where I would look at doing it, you'd have to pull this wire out so you don't get into that, or simply carve away right in here big enough for the decoder. Let me go get a decoder and I'll show you what I mean.